I'm here with Melissa Ford, author of Living Service, The Journey of a Prosperous Coach. Melissa is a master business and life coach with over 20 years of experience working with individuals and groups. She offers ongoing programs to coaches to help them strengthen their business mindsets, deepen their service, and increase their profitability. So, Melissa, I was really excited to read this book again. It was like I hadn't even read it before. There's so much good stuff in there for coaches, for beginning coaches, for coaches probably well along the way to be reminded of what it was like. But I was just really grateful for it myself. So would you care to share a little bit about your journey into coaching?
Yeah, I practiced law for about 10 years, but it never really suited me. And so I was happy to leave the profession behind. I know a lot of great lawyers. I love them. And yet this was not for me. And then I had kids and had the ability to be with my kids and be a stay-at-home mom. And during that period of time, I did a lot of, I would call them odd jobs, anywhere from being a substitute teacher to helping my husband start his own business, which he next year will be in business for 25 years. So had the experience of having my husband leave corporate and us beginning to work together, and then realizing that's not something that I really wanted to do. And then other jobs that I did along the way, always wanting to have a business. Actually, I never even saw it as a business, Chris, but always wanting to be a coach. And back then, that term coach really wasn't mainstream. So I knew I liked asking questions. I knew I liked helping people see their limiting beliefs, that kind of thing. But that was always in the background. But I had too much trepidation to move forward. I was really concerned I couldn't do it. And then the very last job that I had before I decided, okay, I'm going to go pro, I'm going to hire somebody to give me their 5 easy tips on how to create clients. I was a barista at Starbucks for 3.5 years, working for medical insurance because I wanted great insurance for really inexpensive fee, monthly, premium. And that's what I did. So that's my background. It's a checkered past.
How did you sort of find your way into coaching?
It started with my own waking up to what was to how I was having my own experiences. So it came about as a result of parenting. And my son, who I love this guy dearly, he's now a young man in his early 30s. We pretty much butted heads, right in the beginning. And it finally hit me, thank goodness. I love his tenacity because he wasn't going to give in. And so I realized something had to change here. And I did not know what it was, but I realized it was here. And I had an amazing therapist that I had gone to a couple of times named Steve Parker. All the men in my life that I love are named Steve, but besides my husband, Brian. And Steve opened my eyes to a place called the Option Institute. And I remember in one of our sessions, Steve said to me, if you could be happy, would you? And it implied I had a choice. I mean, it implied that I was bringing this, suffering upon myself when I thought it was outside circumstances, people, events. And so that was the beginning. And thank goodness for my son, Max, because I realized something had to change here. And that began this journey that I took for about 14 years until I hired my coach, Steve Chandler. So I was busy looking at limiting beliefs and asking questions and doing all that. But back in the 90s, when I started doing that, coach was, like I said, was not mainstream. You might have found it in corporate. You might have found it with actors and singers, but it wasn't, the average person having a coach.
One of the things that I found appealing was that you're very open about a lot of the things that coaches, at least I, myself, and other coaches that I know have had questions about. And one of the interesting things is having a coach for yourself. Can you tell me a little bit about why you think that's important?
Well, all I can do is look at the 12 plus years that I've worked with my coach as well as other coaches. And that has been the transformation. having somebody by my side that is with me and committed to what I'm committed to creating. And I know that I've made this commitment and I need to show up to it. So for me, it's just elevated my consciousness. It's had me be so much more focused and deliberate. I'm willing to test things out that otherwise, if I was left to my own devices, I would probably, I don't know, rationalize not doing it, come up with some sort of excuse. Because what coaching really allowed me to do, and the people that I work with, is to do the things that are uncomfortable so that I can grow and I can start to, I can start to have a different experience with life. I can, if I want to have a coaching business, I can start to take the steps that might seem stomach turning, like, oh my gosh, I can't do that. But with a coach by your side, you're in and you're going to go for it. So it really, it was the reason I feel like where I am today. It also speeds up the process, because when you're in a relationship with somebody like that, they're going to say things to you that other people aren't going to say. When you've committed to a coach and you've paid the money to be coached, you're not going to defend. You're not going to protect. You're not going to explain things away. You're going to do what you need to do. Thank goodness, because there was a lot I had to do that I had put off for, like I told you, for 14 years until I hired Steve Chandler.
A lot of business building, a lot of development as a coach. What else?
Oh, a ton of insecurity. That was masked as I've got it together. I know what I'm doing. I'm a professional. No, I wasn't. But there was this image that was being portrayed, and underneath it was just massive insecurity, a fixed mindset in terms of learning. If I had to learn, then that meant something wrong. Something was wrong with me. Versus, oh, I get to learn, I'm excited. No. So there was all this inner work that had to be done. But when I first started with Steve, I was just looking for the outer game.
Mm-hmm.
Give me the 5 tips, give me the 3, I don't know, keys to success, give me whatever. And when I started to realize that I had to participate and what had to change was internally, it was very sobering. But I saw it, and I saw it in different stages. It wasn't like, oh, I saw it. It kept opening up where I could see it. That's the beauty of coaching. And when I kept seeing it, I thought, okay, there's a way forward, and it's here. And then now I've got somebody to help me.
Yeah, you talk about the 3 stages of coaching mastery, and you include a detour along the way. If you could talk about that, that would be great. And also a sense of one of the things I'm interested in is, when did you start to realize you could help people? When did you start to realize you could open them up to something within themselves that would be useful?
Oh gosh, I want to answer that first. When I really started to see the power of coaching for what it had done for me. Prior to that, I was the coach without a coach. I thought I knew everything, and people could hire me for my wisdom. Mm-hmm. It sounds crazy, but truly that's where I was coming from. And, I could lead them, and I could illuminate the path ahead of them, or whatever else I was thinking. Why did I need a coach? I had it together. I had asked questions. I had done the work. So, I saw what had changed, and it wasn't just a temporary change. It was permanent. And Chris, this wasn't something that happened in 6 weeks. This was, I would say, after 3 to 4 years of being coached. Because I always like to say the starting line was here and I was here. I had to get to the starting line. I mean, I work with people now who are at the starting line and boom, they just take off. But I wasn't. So I just saw what started to transform here. And it was, at first it was a little shaky. It wasn't super solid, but then the more that I kept getting coached, the more that I kept taking action, because you have to do both, it became more and more solid and integrated. My coach would always say, this is inside you. Nobody can take it away. It's yours. And I heard it, but there was a point in time where I went, I get it. And it was so freeing. And now, because of that experience, and it happened over time, I absolutely know if somebody comes to me and they're willing to be honest and open, and they're willing to test things out, and they're committed, they're in for a period of time with me, we're going to make stuff happen. One of the things that when I work with, well, particularly when I'm helping coaches build businesses, but even when I'm working with leaders inside organizations, the thing that I love about my own journey is that I feel like I've done it all, and I continue to push into those edges, or as David White would talk about, the frontiers. I continue to move into the direction where there's some discomfort or resistance, or there's sometimes it shows up as excitement. And I love that, because as a coach, I can't ask somebody to do what I haven't been willing to do. Like, no way, that's not going to work out. So it's not just coming from, oh, this is a great idea, client, why don't you test this out? It's coming from, hey, I've been there. So if I've got a client who's really struggling or whatever, there's a heck of a lot of compassion and also understanding, because I've been there. And they can hang in, and I can hang in there with them.
Okay, well, let's go back to the stages of mastery, if you don't mind. This is one of those things that I like, that there's a lot of exploration of your journey, which I think will resonate with other coaches on the path. Shall I remind you of the 3 stages of mastery?
Please, I would love that.
There's love your process,
Yeah.
own your progress, and you got this. And along the way, you had a detour as well, which I think a lot of coaches are familiar with. So would you care to speak to any of that?
I would. So love the process. When I first started, I didn't want to love any process. I just, like I said, I wanted the 5 tips. Let's just get on with it. So when I hired Steve, it was like, let's do this. You're a nice person. It's very transactional, and, we're done. And that, obviously, that's not what occurred. So I had to learn to love the process of learning, frankly. And that took time, because I was very resistant to it. I kept thinking, and this is very common with coaches, why is this taking so long? I should be way ahead of where I'm at. You got to be kidding me. I'm a mature adult. This is like, I'm back in kindergarten. Why is this taking so long? And I was looking for the result of the financial result. But the financial result wasn't going to hit for me, or for most coaches, until the internal stuff starts to shift. The insecurity, the wondering what people think about me, and then sometimes it can flip, the irritation onto, why is this person hiring me? I've spent so much time with them. So I had to learn to love the doing, the mistake making, the getting up, the doing it again, the bringing it to my coach. I had to also move past, and this took time, the mind and all the self-judgment, because that was a racket going on as well. So I had to love the process, and I had to fall in love with the process of enrollment when it came to being a coach, because you can call yourself a coach, you can have an LLC or a S Corp or whatever. You can even have QuickBooks, you can have an administrative assistant, VA, but if you are not creating clients, you can't coach. You're not running a business. So that's the first thing. And then own your progress. What I love about that is, again, the mind's going to jump to the future, and it's going to be constantly thinking, this isn't going quick enough. What's wrong with me? How come everybody else is getting it? Because it'll get into a comparison game with, any other coach out there, whether they're colleagues that you met in a school or in a workshop or social media. Like, there'll be this constant comparison. So I had to learn how to slow down and actually get who I am, who I was, what had changed, because mine's always forward thinking. So to own what was going on, to own my ability to help people, to recognize the change in me, to get who I was. I was often reminded by Steve, go for a walk and get who you are. Because there was this dissatisfaction with who I was and where I was at.
Yeah, there was a moving moment when he said something like, something about updating your view of yourself or your understanding of who you are, which I took to mean you can make a lot of progress, but still be stuck in your old way of thinking about yourself.
Right. That's exactly true. And I remember Steve once said, people are usually 2 years behind
Hmm.
where they're at. And that really hit me because I was still evaluating where I was at based on where I used to be. And I hadn't slowed down to really look at, okay, what's going on here and what's changed and what feels differently internally. And what am I seeing in terms of the people that I'm helping and their satisfaction? And are they coming back? Do they want to be coached again? My daughter just texted me this morning because I had a personal thing going on. And she said, you got this. You've got this, Mom, which is super sweet. And it's a reminder that all of us do have it. You know, when there's a desire and there's been a commitment to yourself and to what it is that you want to create, and you're willing to take action, you have it. It's a matter of it's going to be unfolding. So a certainty that what you want, you can create. And that comes with loving the process and owning your progress. It comes, and then it's more of the reminder than the doubt that shows up. Doubt might still show up from time to time, but there's a stronger sense. Yeah, I have this. This is going to work, or at least I'm willing to test it out, and I know what it's going to take to get up again and do something different.
You have a chapter on doing the do-over. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah. So I would trip up, face plant, screw up. I would do things where later there would just be this shame fest that would happen afterwards. Like, oh my God, I can't even believe I said that or did that, or I didn't do this, or, oh my gosh, I know to do that. How come I didn't do it? And I remember I had one coaching session with Steve, and I admitted, I'm like, you know what, if I were this guy that I had, I think 3 conversations with, I wouldn't have hired me. And he said to me, why is that? I said, because he doesn't really know what coaching can do for him. I mean, he thinks he does, but he hasn't been coached long enough to really get, wow, this stuff's powerful, and how his life's going to change and how he's going to benefit and the people that he's going to help and his family, and, and not giving up on himself. And Steve just said, go back and ask him for a do-over. Say, do you want to coach again? Or I've got something else that I can offer you. Not discounted, but simply something smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I push a session, like I was rushing it to try to get to, well, maybe they might ask me what it would be like to continue or whatever. And I was more focused on that. I just fess up and say, at that last session, we were moving too quickly. So what I recommend is we have a do-over. We coach again. That other one, just disregarded. It didn't even happen. Let's do it again. And people were really, they were very kind. And I think a lot of them were very surprised, because I don't think many people or any coach that they had experienced would come up and say, let's do it again. And it helped me. It made me feel a lot better about the screw ups, because I could ask for the do-over.
Yeah, it sort of introduces the idea of we're used to thinking about relationships, especially like that, in a transactional kind of way.
Yeah.
But the service model that you're talking about here, it's not about not making money or having a business or anything like that, but it is about service first and foremost. I think you talk about a conversation you had with Ron Wilder where he's saying don't talk about coaching in your coaching sessions.
Yeah. First of all, shout out to Ron Wilder. I thought people were buying coaching. I really did, because, isn't that what I was selling? And I would talk about coaching. I'd talk about, people would typically say, well, what's your process? Or, what can you guarantee? Or, how many people have you coached, or whatever they were referring to. They were trying to dig into more of the, what does coaching look like? And I spent a lot of time talking about it, until one time Ron said to me, Melissa, you have to stop talking about coaching. I'm like, what? And he said, yeah, you seem really hung up on telling everybody about coaching and the power of coaching, how it's transformed your life and your stories about coaching. He said, stop. So for the next, I don't know if we were together 6 months at that point, but for the remainder of the time we're together, don't ever talk to anybody about coaching. Don't write in your email about coaching. Don't utter the word coaching. And I thought, how am I going to do this? And he was really calm. He's like, you'll figure it out. Well, okay. But what it did was it had me slow down long enough to really stop thinking about me and this concept of coaching, and to be in somebody's world and to really find out what it was that they wanted, why they wanted it, to coach them a bit around it, to move the needle slightly so that they could actually see, and I could see, that they were coachable and we fit well. I could help to do that. And then to talk about, well, if they wanted to continue, what would be possible for them? How would life be different? How would they benefit the people in their lives, whatever they wanted to create? And that way I got off of the concept of coaching. And that changed things tremendously for me. And later when I reflected on it, I thought, well, when I first hired my coach, I wasn't buying coaching. I was buying this guy's time to help me. That's what I was buying. And it certainly wasn't coaching. That was a real powerful lesson for me. And it still applies today. I mean, it made such a huge impact.
You also talk a lot about fees, so determining your fee and things like that, which I think is a useful discussion for coaches. I think I'll read a brief part here. In the beginning, the best piece of advice I ever received regarding fees was this: charge a fee for which, if the prospect says yes, I'm excited to work with them. If the prospect says no, I'm happy to part ways. But do what feels right for you.
Yeah, it ultimately does come down to what feels right for you. Because if you've got such a high fee, you as a coach, and when I'm saying such a high fee, like for where you're at in your evolution, if I have a fee that in my mind is so high that I'm uncomfortable with it, then the energy is going to change. So I'm coaching you, and then you say to me, okay, I'd like to continue. Now the energy is shifted here, and I'm trying to say a fee that, I just might think this is impossible to get, or who am I to ask for this, or this person's never going to say yes. It's going to totally come across to the other person. And, more than likely, the person's not going to continue. So I want whoever I'm helping to be comfortable with the fee. It doesn't mean it can't be a slight stretch, but there has to be an understanding for the coach that it makes sense on some level. So what I'll always say to a coach is come up with, what feels good, whether they say yes or no. If you want to stretch it a little bit, go ahead. But now get enrolled in your fee. That's not in the book, but it's something that I learned after I wrote the book. Get enrolled in it. Like, why is that such an awesome offer? And get enrolled in what the other person wants to create. And then you can start to look at it and say to yourself, yeah, it makes sense. This fee makes sense. And another thing is I don't charge hourly, and some coaches do, and that's perfectly fine. For the coaches who don't charge hourly and they have a package and, they have spot coaching and limited access to you, I always like to tell coaches is get clear on what the hourly fee is, just so you have an idea. So when you go to price other things, you're not just pulling some random number out of your mind because, ooh, that sounds great, I think I'll go with that. Because ultimately, what is the hourly rate? What are you being paid? So that as a business person, I'm plugged into my hourly rate, what I know that I'm getting, and then I can just create up and down from there.
Something we haven't directly touched on yet is, what does the word service mean to you?
Gosh, the definition of service has changed over the years, but no, let me put it like this. The definition of service hasn't changed. It's still, how can I help? But I've changed. And so the me before was looking to get. So if I just serve, if I figure this service thing out, then I'll be able to get clients. I'll be able to make money. I'll be able to have a full-time business. I'll be able to tell people I'm successful. I'll be able to feel like, I'm an amazing coach because look at these people that I've helped and see how their lives changed. It was very, very ego-based. And I didn't really know that. And even when I started to see that that's what was going on, I didn't feel bad about it. It was just where I was at, But over time, what had changed was that inside it was coming from love. So service is love. So it's a depth of love, it's a caring for somebody else, but also from a place where I'll tell you what I might be afraid to tell you if you're open to it. It's not going to hold back out of fear of what you might think about me or whether you're going to sign up with me. So service is a lot more powerful and bolder and stronger, but it's all coming from love.
It's a shifting from a transactional understanding of a business. And it's almost tricky to shift the mind because I think we're used to thinking of things in very transactional ways in life. Do you know when that started to happen for you, or was it just very gradual? Or
it was gradual. I mean, my coach was trying to get me to see it. Like I couldn't see it. There was one moment where we had finished working together for a year, call it year 3 or something. And I get this big box delivered to my home. And I open it up and there's 100 reinventing yourself books that Steve had written. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, there's been a big error at the warehouse. They were probably only supposed to ship out a couple and they've shipped out 100. And I remember emailing Steve saying there's been a mistake. And he said to me, no, there's been no mistake. So our work is complete for this year. You're going to have enough books to send out to people that could help them. I really want you to understand what service is. Now, the me then, thank goodness, could start to see it was service. The me before would have been, isn't that nice that I can promote Steve's book? That's where that thinking would have come from, But I saw it and I'm like, this is service. There is this genuine, heartfelt, loving, giving, unattached to anything. It's really unattached to anything, unattached to you liking me, unattached to you hiring me, unattached to you changing. You don't even have to change. Unattached to you getting this. Because any attachment dilutes service. It's felt immediately. There's some agenda I've got going on, and that's a repellent for anybody. And this is something that has to be practiced and practiced. I mean, for me, service was constantly getting the focus off of me and getting it on to the person across the table from me or across the screen or whatever. So it took, there were moments where I could see it. When I think about it and I tear up about it, it's genuinely experiencing love and such a deep appreciation for Chris growing a business and I could actually become more loving. In fact, the more loving that I am, the better my business is and my personal life gets better. What? You know?
If you were going to write a sequel or to the further adventures of a prosperous coach, where would you be at the moment? What would you say in that chapter?
Oh, there's so many things. I would definitely say to people, do whatever, keep getting coached on client enrollment, on service, on running a business like a business, on how every system's perfect for the results it creates. Keep getting coached in the business side, and then start opening yourself up to your personal life, understanding that what you are and who you are is way before the content of your mental experience. Start looking beyond ego. Start going into the relationships in your life that are still sticky. Don't ignore them. They're coming from your own projections. Don't avoid any dark corner. Head directly there, because that's where the aliveness is and the freedom. That's where your ability to get better and better as a coach lies. Go there, and your own life getting better, because we're not, we're here to enjoy this small amount of time we have on this planet. Use that and go into those areas. That's what I would say. And it's so much more fun too.
So what's different in your life at this stage of your journey?
Yeah. Well, first of all, creating clients is a heck of a lot more fun. And yeah, the growth is much more fun. I have a greater capacity for handling the growth and being with it. It's still fun making money. It's still fun seeing somebody that I can help and them saying yes. I still enjoy if I don't think I can help somebody and I know exactly the person to send them to that coach. That feels so good to do that. Before, I never wanted to do that. Are you kidding? I'm not turning away anything. So that's fun. In my personal life, my relationship with my husband is, so much stronger, which is fantastic. I've been married 30 some odd years, and I would say these last 3-4 years have been the best. So
I'll just throw out there that there's a very funny, interesting story in the book about a conversation with your husband.
Yeah, I would say that was the beginning of it. So my personal life is so much better, so much more joyful. I've got great relationships with both my adult children, which is wonderful. Yeah, my relationships have improved simply because I started to see where how they were being created was coming from what was getting projected over here, and that's changed everything. And sure, I can still get caught up and tripped up on feeling irritated or feeling afraid or whatever, but it's not something to eliminate. It's just something to get curious about and look at. So that's what's changed. I'm so grateful for it, and the fact that I hung in there. That's something else that I would definitely tell coaches is don't give up on yourself. And get a coach. And if you feel like you can't afford a coach, get a peer coach, do something. I had one coach, he was sharing how it's really great that he can self-coach and reframe ideas. Don't do that. Because what's happening is you're self-coaching and reframing ideas in a paradigm that more than likely is not working for you. Get somebody who is not in the paradigm, who can listen to you and see your story, because you're not seeing it. You're trying to untangle it inside the story, and it's not going to work. So
I will second that. It's very easy to be clever with yourself.
Oh my gosh, right?
Living Service, the journey of a prosperous coach. Melissa, it's amazing to talk to you. Thanks a lot for spending time with me today.
Oh, thanks, Chris. I love you. And thanks for asking to do this.
Pleasure.